right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you're well fortified after the coffee break. We'll move on to plenary session 1, and the topic here is what next for Asia? Now, please join me in welcoming the distinguished panelists on stage. If I could have all of you, please. Mr. Montek Singh, Ahluwalia, Dr. Narongchai Akrasanee, Mr. Peiding, Mr. Lee Wei, Professor Mari Pangestu, and Zai Yar Aung. The moderator is Professor Chung Min Lee.
Okay, here we go. Thank you.
Good morning. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be the first moderator of the first inaugural Singapore Forum. And let me thank our gracious hosts, the government of Singapore, His Excellency Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, who gave us a tour d'horizon last night about the state of affairs in this region, to Mr. Won Kang Seng, former Deputy Prime Minister and our main host, to Ambassador Chan Heng Chi, who personifies all the best qualities of Singapore's intellectual and diplomatic tradition, and to all members and sponsors of the Singapore Forum. Our mandate this morning is to explore Asia's next steps. And I think this is a very opportune moment because, as all of us know in this room, just a few weeks ago, the passing of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, one of Asia's post-war giants, reminds all of us that after the passing of a pioneer, the torch passes to a new generation, and it is up to us to make sure that his legacy lives on, modified, and perhaps even improved. And so the search for a new Asian model is replete, however, with immense challenges. We are all aware that Asia is the engine of the world economy, and Asia's rise is indisputable and irreversible. But Asia is also home to the world's most complex, largest, and most difficult security and political issues. So I would argue that Asia's rise is not the story. The real story is what happens after Asia rises. And to help us glimpse into the future of Asia, we have an outstanding panel. Their bios are before you, so I will not introduce all of them to you in person. But beginning from on the other side of the panel, Mr. Montek Singh, Ahluwalia from India, and then, followed by him, Dr. Narongchai Akrasanee from Thailand, Mr. Peiding from China, Mr. Lee Wei, also from China, Professor Mari Pangestu from Indonesia, and last but not least, Mr. Zai Yar Aung from Myanmar. All of the panelists are either practicing policymakers or have had very high-level experience running ministries in their respective governments. We have until 11:05, and what I would like to do is ask all our panelists to begin by giving 5 7-minute presentations, insights of what they believe are the key issues. And then I will ask each panelist very penetrating questions, and I expect all of you to be very, very frank in your answers. And then I will open the floor to the discussions to the floor. We'll get Q&As, and then I will conclude by asking all of our panelists for a final commentary. So without further ado, let me invite our distinguished participant from India to begin and to launch the first Singapore Forum and the inaugural Plenary one. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is really quite an honor to be the first panelist of the first forum. You're the first moderator. You know, since you've given me a very rationed amount of time, I just want to make a few points. We've had two outstanding kickoff speeches by the Prime Minister and the former President. And I think underlying those speeches is a very powerful, optimistic message, combined with a very reasonable presentation of the complexities. Now, I think that putting some numbers to what is possible is useful. And if you look at the last 10 or 12 years, you know, the following numbers tell you what's happened in the global economy. I mean, the world grew just under 4% per year. The advanced economies grew under 2% per year. The emerging markets grew on an average 6.3% per year. And this is usually described as the rise of emerging markets. But you know, within emerging markets, it's really an Asian story, because the Asian emerging markets grew at 6.7%, and the other emerging markets grew only a little faster than the rest of the world, of course much faster than the industrialized countries. But in the last 10 or 12 years, it's the share of the Asian emerging markets in the world economy that shows the biggest increase. And I think this has been traditionally described as the result of successfully cashing in on the enormous opportunities offered by world trade, which is of course correct. Some countries did it very early, like China. Others latched onto it later, like India. But all of them more or less followed the same path. But you know, underneath this, although driven by a linkage with global markets, there was in fact an extraordinary increase in supply side capabilities. That means human capabilities, entrepreneurial capabilities, institutional capabilities, savings rates, etc. Now, while the world has changed and industrialized economies we know are going to grow much less fast than they used to, and there are, except for the United States, they all have problems. There's no reason to think that the growth of supply side capabilities will suddenly disappear and that everybody will become constrained by the growth that, to the growth that they can expect, given the slowdown in industrialized countries. So the central challenge for Asia is that on the supply side, there's no reason to think that the growth capability has reduced. In fact, human capabilities, skill capabilities, institutional capabilities, ability to cooperate with each other, openness, all of this is actually increasing. The only negative in medium term is that the growth of industrialized countries is slowing down. But you know, if these countries remain open amongst themselves, they become a much larger part of world trade. So I would assert that although the slowing down of industrialized countries requires us to restructure our thinking a little bit, and there won't be that much of a powerful influence coming from the growth of trade with industrialized countries, it can be replaced just as much by a growth of trade among the Asian countries themselves, and of course the other other emerging markets in the world. Now that requires continuation of policies for integration, also requires continuation of deepening of this integration. Now, as far as Asia is concerned, certainly on the trade front, there's a lot going on that is deepening the integration. Certainly in India, for example, we have for many years been trying to follow a look east policy, and actually over the last few years, there's been quite a lot of success in the government negotiating. We've entered into a free trade agreement with ASEAN, which over a number of years are going to lower all sorts of trade barriers. We're actively encouraging investment both out of India into the Asian countries and from the Asian countries, all the Asian countries, including China, into India, and that is happening quite well. One area where I think we're not actually doing very much, and this is the last point that I want to mention, is in the area of integration of capital markets. You know, one of the big successes, one of the distinguishing characteristics of the Asian economies compared to other emerging market economies is that they are high savings economies. So you've got a part of the world that's growing rapidly, you've got a part of the world that has very high savings rates, but there's not that much integration of the capital market among these countries. Whatever integration there is occurs via the established global financial sector markets. Now, it seems to me that if this is the part of the world that's growing rapidly, and this is the part of the world that has the highest savings rate, it's quite logical that we should be building institutional capabilities of cooperating with each other so that we can have a better allocation of savings across borders. And frankly, in that sense, a reference was made to the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is being kicked off by China, which most of us have joined in one way or the other. I mean, that's a very good initiative. That's sort of an Asian initiative to mobilize savings for the deployment into infrastructure. And frankly, from the demand side, although we all have to cope with a bit lower growth of exports to industrialized countries, we can offset that by a big boost on the demand side from higher investment in infrastructure. I mean, certainly in India, but I think also in a lot of the Asian countries, and particularly for cross-country logistics infrastructure, there is a huge need for building up infrastructure if we want to envisage a continued growth of this region somewhere around 7% or so. Some countries growing faster, some countries growing slower. I mean, China is clearly slowing down after 30 years of growing at 10%. I hope that India is sort of accelerating away from a short-term slowdown, and we could quite easily in India grow at about 8% for the next 10 years. And ASEAN's also improved its performance, but you know, to maintain that sort of growth rate, there will have to be a huge amount of investment in infrastructure. So that should be a high priority, and whatever cooperation facilitates that, to my mind, would be a very important thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask Dr. Narongchai Akrasanee to give the Thai perspective, please.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have this prepared text, but having listened to the two excellent speakers, I think I can throw them away. I like to press like, for last night and for this morning. It was superb. But since I have to say something, I'll make 5 points, 5 minutes. First, of course, is to congratulate Singapore for the 50th anniversary, and to ASEAN 2015, which is only 2 years away from 50th anniversary. For Singapore, excellent job of nation building, and for ASEAN, excellent job of Southeast Asian regional region building. Here, I like to make a point about the success of Singapore and ASEAN, maybe in that relation. We have in ASEAN these three O's, 3 countries: Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia. Singapore, Rajaratnam, at that time, the endowment on his honor. Singapore is always scheming, plotting something, And Thailand would do this lobbying, persuading, seducing. Then Indonesia finalizing. So if we have these 3 O's working, we will succeed. I can confirm what happened when we achieved AFTA, the ASEAN Free Trade Area. And the agreement was signed here in this hotel in February 1992, when we had the ASEAN Summit. It was exactly the same as when ASEAN was formed in 1967. So first point. Second point about the success story of Asia, I just like to highlight this. I realized many years ago when I saw China opening. But the one that I became convinced was when I went to India in 1991, July. And I think because of Dr. Montek Singh and Chidambaram and others, I saw Indian opening. So with China opening, Indian opening, the world will change. As Napoleon said many years ago, he said, when China moves, it will move the world. And I should add, Napoleon, when India talks, the whole world will be silent. It's obvious. The Chinese are hardworking people, so they became factory of the world. The Indians are hard talking, and they became the call center of the world. So when you have people working, people talking, that's explain why Asia has been so successful. This point has not been mentioned by many other speakers, but I observed that because I was in Delhi just that day when the bill was passed, and the people were selling budget in the street. In my country, you have a budget where they throw it away. But in India, they are selling it in the streets. And I asked Dr. Chidabaram the next day when we had lunch, what was it? He said, it outlined the reform. Was that right? Confirm? Thank you very much. So I'm not just talking nonsense, confirmed by the Indian now. Now, third point. We have new challenges. These were all mentioned by the other two speakers. Here in my profession, they are referred to as the new normal. And Dr. Montek Singh mentioned that. The new normal is about lower growth rate in general, but even more important is the lower trade growth rate, below GDP growth rate. And this, according to IMF statistics, happened during the last 7 or 8 years. So this is a new, what we call new normal. And also the new common, global warming, human rights and human trafficking, and illicit trading. I think these are all the new challenges, but we are facing it. All of us are facing it, but we are blessed with many others because of the rising of the middle class, of the entrepreneurship, connectivity, and so on. As mentioned by President of Indonesia this morning, I think we could face the challenges. These are the third point. Fourth point, to face the new challenges, most important is whether we can continue to cooperate. I have been working on regional cooperation for the last 40 years. Now I am beginning to worry. I think it's so important that we have to keep the combine from becoming the divide, and to use technology to manage risk and to enhance productivity and to create opportunity accessibility. Can we do it? We need to trade more among ourselves. Of course, we can afford to buy and sell more among ourselves. We need to facilitate trade in services among ourselves. And I think, since I'm now energy minister and nobody in Thailand ever expected I would become one, because I'm not expert on energy, I think we need to ensure energy security. This is one point I like to underline. Somehow, the energy people, they have analyzed the situation in the South China Sea and the East China Sea and so on. And they thought it was because of the concern about energy security. I think we are having a lot of revolution in energy, in shale oil and gas production, in LNG revolution, in the renewables, and in the hybrid electric motor internal combustion engine evolution. We can do this. We can use the new so-called technological development to ensure energy security without fighting for energy. So I hope, if people are trying to fight about energy in the South China Sea, I hope they do not do that. Final is about digitalization. I very much would like to see more digitalization in our economies for our development. Final remarks, last minute, Singapore very strict about time. Unbelievable, we are not like that. Final remarks, in the case of Thailand, I think we are now becoming more regionally oriented. We have adopted the regionally oriented strategy for development. There are 3 tiers of regional cooperation. GMS for expanded production and market access, market basis, ASEAN for better resource allocation, and ASEAN plus and other for internationalization. And we intend to move into the digital economy as fast as possible. And very final remark, being facilitated by an authority-oriented, please be careful. I'm not saying military-oriented, authority-oriented government. I think we can do this. very quickly at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There were some comments that were very, very on the fine line, but I will ask my Indian friend to respond to our Thai colleague later on. But let us continue first. And so let me then invite Mr. G. Peiding for his remarks. By the way, as you know, some of our panelists will be speaking in Chinese, and there is obviously simultaneous translation.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in the past 4 decades, Asia's economy has grown remarkably. Asia today is the most dynamic region of our world, with great potentials and its global strategic importance. It's becoming more and more outstanding. As an important driving force for the world economic growth, Asia has contributed to over 60% of the global economic growth. According to the ADB's statistics forecast, Asia as a whole will grow at a steady 6.3% in 2015 and 2016, the same pace as last year, 2014. Let me focus closer. Southeast Asia is expecting its strengthening growth vigorously, and the regional economic integration will gain further traction with the establishment of ASEAN Economic Community at the end of 2015. As you might be aware, the Chinese economy has entered a state of new normal. It is shifting gear from high speed to the medium to high speed growth, from an extensive model that emphasized scale and speed to a more intensive and emphasizing quality and efficiency, and from being driven by investment in production factors to being driven by innovation. China's economy grew by 7.4% last year. Continued reform implementation in my country provides the solid foundation for the region's prospects, and China is forecast achieve about 7% GDP growth this year. This new normal of Chinese economy will continue to bring more opportunities of trade, growth, investment, and cooperation for other countries in Asia and beyond. In the coming 5 years, China will import more than $10 trillion of goods. Chinese investment overseas will exceed $500 billion, and more than 500 million outbound visits will be made by Chinese tourists. These are just a few figures I want to share with our audience. As the Chinese saying goes, close neighbors are better than distant relatives. China has always been firm in its commitment to building friendship and partnership with its neighbors to foster an amicable, secure, and prosperous neighborhood. Under the principle of amity, sincerity, mutual benefit, and inclusiveness, China is working actively to deepen win-win cooperation and connectivity with its neighbors to bring them even more benefit with its own development. China has signed treaties of good neighborliness, friendship, cooperation with 8 of its neighbors, and is holding discussions to sign a same treaty with ASEAN. The initiatives of building a Silk Road common economic belt and the 21st century maritime Silk Road put forward by President Xi Jinping, featuring the principle of wide consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, will meet the development of needs of China, countries along the route, and regions at large. There will be real chorus comprising all the countries along the routes, not just a solo for China itself. To develop the Belt and the Road is not to replace existing mechanisms or initiatives for regional cooperation. Much to the contrary, we will build on the existing basis to help countries align their development strategies and form complementarity. Currently, more than 50 countries along the route and international organizations have shown interest in taking part in the development of the Belt and the Road. The vision and action paper of the initiative has been developed. Substantive progress has been made in establishing of the AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The Silk Road Fund has been launched, and the construction of a number of infrastructure connectivity projects are moving forward. These early steps and moves have clearly and truly pointed to the broad prospects of the Belt and Road initiative will bring. It is my view the regional situation in Asia is undergoing a profound and complex change. New complicating elements are emerging in the regional situation. But on the whole, the situation is good in our region of Asia, especially when compared with other regions of the world. First, with sustained, robust economic growth, Asia is one of the regions with the greatest development, vibrancy, and potential. Second, Asia is maintained overall peace and stability. It is true that we have some disputes around our region, but they are under effective control, and all parties concerned are looking forward for peaceful solution through negotiations. Third, with a rising standing in the global architecture, Asia has attracted attention from across the world. Asian countries are happy about the proud of the achievements the region has made. They want to sustain the good momentum of peace, development, and cooperation in the region. This is a shared aspiration of the people across the region, and a development trend that cannot be stopped. Here I would like to emphasize the following. First and foremost, we need to make sure that all the countries respect one another and treat each other as equals. Efforts should be made to seek common grounds while sharing differences, and better still, to increase common interests and dissolve differences. The hard-won peace and stability in Asia and sound momentum for development should be upheld by all of us. All of us must oppose interference in other countries' internal affairs and reject attempts to destabilize the region out of self motives. Second, we need to seek win-win cooperation and common development. China and ASEAN countries will join hands in building an even closer China-ASEAN community of common destiny. The building of an East Asian economic community for ASEAN, China, Japan, and ROK will be completed in the year of 2020. We should actively build a free trade cooperation network in Asia and strive to conclude negotiations on an upgraded China-ASEAN FTA and on Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, in 2015. We will vigorously promote a system of regional financial cooperation, explore a platform for exchanges and cooperation among Asian financial institutions, and advance complementary and coordinated development between Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, and such multilateral financial institutions as the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. We will strengthen practical cooperation in currency stability, investment and financing, and credit rating, make progress in institution building for Chiang Mai Initiative, multilateralization, and build a regional financial security network. We will work forward an energy and resources cooperation mechanism in Asia to ensure energy and resources security. We may increase maritime connectivity, speed up institution building for marine cooperation in Asia, and step up cooperation in marine economy, environmental protection, disaster management, and fishery. This way, we could turn the seas of Asia
Mr. G,
into.
I'm very sorry, but as we know, we only have a few minutes left, so you.
No, I just read the line. The third,
yes.
We need to pursue common. Okay, just can you give me 10 seconds to wind up?
I'll give you 10 seconds.
10 seconds. The fourth, we need to ensure the inclusivity and mutual understanding. Let us try and safeguard peace, and peace and stability are very important. The future of Asia rests on stability, rests in peace. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm sorry for 10 seconds.
Next, we'll have Mr. Lee Wei, but he'll be speaking in Chinese. So please, for those of you who don't speak Chinese, turn on your earpieces.
好，女士们、先生们、朋友们，大家早上好。我和前面的几位发言嘉宾也有同样的难处。我确实是我们根据主办方开始的要求，准备了一个15分钟的演讲稿，但是本场开始的时候让我压缩到不到8分钟，但是我坐到这儿的时候让我到5到7分钟，这是主席来考验我们的应变能力，所以我也不能照稿子念了。我想呢，就从2个方面呢谈一点自己的想法。一个呢，亚洲当代的世界地位 和未来的一些看法。第二个呢，我想谈谈对未来亚洲的和平发展，我们应该也可以做些什么。最后我还提一下我们的智库。各位都知道，亚洲在人类社会的发展历史上有着非常辉煌的业绩，创造了很多奇迹，做出了很多贡献。尤其是70年代，上世纪70年代以后，在世界的和平经济发展当中更为突出。现在，亚洲也在呈现出一派欣欣向荣的经济社会发展的这种景象。仅举一个数据，2013年，亚洲经济总量占世界 GDP 的总量的份额已经达到了33%，而且根据亚行的一个研究报告，预计到2020年，亚洲恐怕是成为，如果大的区域划分，成为世界最大的经济总量的一个区域。所以说，我认为亚洲在当今世界的地位可以说是举足轻重，亚洲对世界未来的发展也是绝不可轻视。当然了，我们在看到亚洲目前的好的一面，或者是取得业绩的光辉业绩的一面的同时，我们也知道亚洲些未来的发展也面临着诸多的挑战和风险。比如讲，亚洲地区发展的不平衡问题就很突出。亚洲大约还有15亿左右的贫困人口，我们不同国家有的内部也面临着族群、阶层之间的冲突，有的还比较激烈，还有在我们这些历史问题上，或者在一些领土问题上，这是大家都客观看到的，存在待以解决的基础问题。还有这个亚洲的崛起，也使世界上的一些大国，或者讲世界格局的调整，形成了很多更为复杂的因素。甚至我看有个别少数的预言家，甚至把亚洲的未来也有很多一些极端的看法，当然是在冲突方面。但是我认为，冲突不是亚洲未来的必然。从历史和现实来看，我认为未来亚洲的安全和平发展是可以期望的，也可以做到的。我相信亚洲各国政府和各国人民有一个共同的愿望，也就是和平、安全、稳定的发展，去谋取人们生活更美好的未来。另外，人类发展史上解决突出矛盾的一些经验也可以借鉴，包括2战以后的欧洲，也包括我们亚洲自身在区域，包括东盟在发展这10几年历史上取得经验，都可以借鉴。所以我是坚定的相信，未来的亚洲是一个和平、安全、稳定发展的亚洲。第二个呢，我想谈点想法，就是我们能为这样一个美好的亚洲，我们应该或者可以做些什么？我这是里面呢谈6个观点，6个观点不一定详细阐述了一个是呢，我们要建设一个更为开放的亚洲。亚洲可以说，从上世纪后期，甚至可以追溯到这个19世纪末期开始，无论是主动的还是被动的，这100多年的历史可以证明亚洲是一个开放的亚洲。但是未来的世界的发展，世界的共荣、协同合作的发展，实际上更需要亚洲进一步开放，而且亚洲自身的发展需要自己内部的国与国之间、地区之间的合作，进一步的合作协调，也需要亚洲以外其他区域的国家和人民的理解、支持和合作。 所以我认为，一个更为开放的亚洲，是未来更为和平、安全、稳定发展的亚洲的一个必要因素。第二，建设一个和平安全的亚洲。我前面讲的了，这毫无疑问，这是各国人民，不仅是亚洲，世界各国人民政府的共同的愿望。在这个方面，我们认为亚洲政府和人民都大有可为。我这儿仅举2个例子吧。一个，你看，早在这个上世纪50年代二战结后的没几年，中国和印度和缅甸，我们就根据当时的那种情况，共同提出了和平共处5项原则。我相信，不仅是对中国，对亚洲很多国家，这种和平相处的5项原则，是为世界的和平安全是做出了一定的贡献的。而且这个精神，虽然在新的世纪，条件环境在不断的变化，我认为这种和平相处的原则的精神并没有改变。还有，冷战结束以后，亚洲国家互相之间双边多边在推进区域合作当中，创造了相互尊重、协商一致、照顾各方舒适度的亚洲的发展方式。我想值得总结，值得发展。第3个呢，我们认为可以做的、应该做的呢，是建设一个机遇共享的亚洲。由于上世纪经济全球化的发展，实际上国与国之间、地区与地区的之间，尤其在经济、文化、社会方面的发展，越来越相互融合。在这种历史背景下，发展的过程当中，机遇共享，利益共沾，我认为这是发展的一个非常重要的一个要素。所以无论在我们国家哪一个国家或者涉及到地区性的提出一些倡议、一些建议方面，我认为应该本着机遇共享、利益共沾，或者讲互利共赢的这样的原则。近年来，这个亚洲相关国家都提出了一些推动区域合作发展的新构想。去年中国的习近平主席也提出了一带一路的这个倡议。我们认为中国提出这个倡议，以及过去亚洲一些国家推动区域发展方面，都体现了这样一种机遇共享、利益共沾、互利共赢的这样的一个精神，也可以讲是个原则。第4个呢，我认为也非常重要的呢，是要建设一个文化包容的亚洲。人类社会发展史，由于地理条件、生活条件、环境条件的不同，实际上形成了不同的族群、不同的文化。中国有句俗话说：“一方水土养一方人。”不仅是国家之间的区别，即使在中国的不同民族之间，即使在一个民族，包括讲汉族，不同的地区之间，它就有不同的生活习惯，尤其有不同的文化。那国与国之间更如此。未来亚洲的发展，未来和平稳定发展的亚洲，未来世界的发展，我认为都需要一个文化包容的这样一个人类社会发展的内涵。第5个呢，对亚洲来说，非常重要的一点呢，要建设一个消除贫困的亚洲。这个人类的社会的发展。
Mr. Lee, I'm
OK，
sorry, we've already
第6个
6，
是建设一个生态可持续的亚洲。这个我就不多讲了。最后呢，我是感到呢，一个 DRC 很多可能朋友们还不是太了解，它是中国政府的一个重要的智库。我们在近些年来在国际合作发展方面都有不少值得称道的一些作品。 在国际上也产生了一定的影响在未来的亚洲发展过程当中我们将继续扩大深化国际的交流合作，我们愿意与世界各国的智库，当然尤其是亚洲各国的智库共同合作，为亚洲的和平稳定发展在战略部署上，在方针政策上，以及在合作交流等等方面我们愿意做出我们自己应有的贡献。谢谢大家，谢谢主持人。
Thank you very much. Let's proceed with Professor Mary Pangestu from Indonesia, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. In the time allotted to me, I'd like to make 3 major points. One is to really understand what's next for Asia, given the new normal or the new landscape, and then reflect on new growth and new strategies. And because I'm an economist, I will take it very much from an economist perspective. Now, first of all, what's next for Asia and what's the new landscape or new normal that we are facing? I think the speeches from yesterday and this morning, as well as the other panelists, have actually outlined this quite well. But in conclusion, I would say that what's next for Asia is low growth, even very low growth at worst, or a slow growth trajectory more permanently at best. Right? And what is this new normal that we are facing? I think we talk about slower trade growth, investment growth, the effect of slowdown in China, and so on. But let's put some numbers and some causal factors as to why are we facing this secular slower growth. It's not just because of the crisis we had slower growth and then we're going to go back to the trajectory pre-crisis. A lot of the factors have been happening even before the crisis. So the World Economic Outlook of the IMF has got some nice numbers that they just released. They basically said that pre-crisis advanced economies grew at 2.25%, 2001 to 2007. And then in the crisis period, the growth went down to 1.4, and the next 5 years, it's going to grow at 1.6%, so only slightly higher. Why? In the crisis slowdown, the main factors for the slowdown is, if you look at capital, labor, and productivity, it is slowdown in capital and labor, and productivity not so much affected. In the next 5 years, they expect that labor productivity will still be, labor growth will be, or employment growth will still be slow for advanced countries because of aging, because of demographic. Investment may have some impact on growth, and productivity probably not much change. Of course, for us, what is important is the emerging markets where we are. For the emerging markets, pre-crisis, the growth rate was close to 7%, as our Indian colleague mentioned. During the crisis, it was 6.5%. In the next 5 years, it's predicted to be only 5.2%. And if you look at why the slowdown happened, for us in the emerging economies, it's because of productivity slowdown. Okay, so in the next 5 years, productivity is going to be a key issue if we are going to even grow at 5.2%. So that's kind of the new normal and the new landscape and how we look at it. Now, can we reflect now? What's more important for us is, of course, what actions should we take nationally, regionally, and even for the business sector to ensure that, at least we're going to target the 5.2% growth or even higher if, let's hope for some technological breakthrough or some breakthrough that will come through. Let me reflect on 5 issues when we talk about new growth and new strategies. First of all is infrastructure. I think everybody will mention this. So investing in infrastructure will get you to the capital growth story. It will help improve the living standards, which will be affected because of the lower growth. And it will lead to efficiency, competitiveness, debottling the supply constraints, and so on. And here the issue, because of a limited budget surplus that will be coming in because of the lower growth, a lot of it's going to have to come from private sector as well as public-private partnership. There's a lot of learning out there to be done about standards, about public-private partnership, about the right kind of policies to induce investments in infrastructure, funding, And on infrastructure, I would like to just add the point that it's not just about investment, efficiency, competitiveness. It's also about equity and improving living standards. It should be investment in sanitation and toilets in India. It's about improving the living standards of people, and that addresses the human capital and the productivity of labor issue also. And it is also about equity. I mean, one thing that hasn't been mentioned since yesterday is increase in equities. And I always believed, as someone who's also looked at trade for a long time, you talk about liberalization and facilitation, but to get equitable benefits of growth from opening up, infrastructure and other policies for bringing in the lesser developed regions and countries to benefit from integration is key. Second is labor force participation and labor productivity. If you want to get growth from employment and labor. We have this aging in Northeast Asia and demographic bonus in Southeast Asia and India. This is two different issues, and how do you manage that? The aging population, the increasing labor participation from aging population, and hey, let's not forget 50% of our population are women. So increasing female participation is also in there, and improving education, secondary level, vocational training, retraining, tertiary education, that comes in there. Third is innovation and productivity, because that's going to be the new sources of growth. It cannot just be capital and labor increase alone. A lot of it has to come from productivity and innovation. And so the new industrial policy should be focusing on how to improve innovation, productivity, R&D across the board, not just in the sectors that you want. Fourth, reforms, opening up, narrow nationalism versus opening up, getting to the difficult areas of reforms, which is the standards, the services sector, and so on. How do we do this? How can we have continued reforms versus what most of us, I was a trade minister for 7 years, face in facing our domestic political constituency? Is the confidence building measures by others doing it, or as we go into regional cooperation, is that going to help countries be able to do more reforms rather than less reforms? And finally, of course, regional cooperation, which is being mentioned by everybody. The difference between now and the past in terms of regional cooperation, I would argue, is that we used to do regional cooperation to have regional production network to service Europe and America. Now it's different. It's about also growth in our region because of middle class, because of aging, all the changes that are happening, and the technology, even offshoring of technology. Our companies domestically, regionally, should also be looking at how they're going to increase their productivity. So they're going to be needing technological breakthroughs too. So it's about our region also. It's not about servicing external markets. And that's why it's imperative for us to get our regional cooperation going again. And my final point, I haven't seen the beep yet, but on the regional cooperation, is it TPP? Is it APEC? What is the APEC one? FTAAP? Is it TPP, or are we still going to push Doha? My plug is for region RCEP, because it is already happening. It is in the region, and we are an open club, by the way, not like TPP. We welcome if the US wants to come and join RCEP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Minister Zai Yar Aung from Myanmar.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you allow me to speak 7 or 10 minutes?
I'll give you 7 minutes.
Okay. I take out so many points, but I have to say something. A lot of things to say with my country. So, distinguished guests, Excellency, and ladies and gentlemen, I first of all would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to the precious forum. I'm very glad to be part of this very distinguished panel. Today, we are sitting at the heart of a region undergoing great changes, and many of them positive, and all of them challenging. We are seeing crucial strategic, political, and economic shift across Asia. including the formation of new trade pacts and groupings, and new directions in investment and capital flows, and the rise of a new major power, superpower, and changes of the military balance. So at the same time, we are also seeing great social and political changes across Asia, including demographic shifts, the emergence of the increasingly affluent middle class and growing urbanization. And intra-trade is soaring and globally represent the fastest growing trade area in the world. By late 2015, intra-Asian trade accounted for nearly 1/3 of Asia's entire annual exports. So nowadays, the global economic market is moving to Asia area, and the geopolitics of Asia region is shaping the economic growth of the region. Especially China, the major power, India, world largest population, Japan, Korea, and ASEAN countries tie each other. China's gradual political, economic, and military rise continue to be a primary focus among many decision-making bodies throughout Asia. So there are other factors in play and crucial choices for the Asian governments ahead. The need for more regional coordinations on trade and investment, and greater focus on finding urgent infrastructure needs has led naturally to various proposals for multilateral agreements and new frameworks for international cooperations. The region's needs on this front have been articulated most recently by China in its recent proposal to launch the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. At the same time, various trade and investment pacts have been proposed or are being negotiated by regional countries. The other challenge is the energy security of the region. Energy is needed for the development of every country, and regional energy demand will increase rapidly more and more in the area. As you all know, global crude oil price was dropped down sharply over the past 7 months and leading to significant revenue shortfalls in many energy exporting nations, while consumers in many importing countries are likely to have to pay less for their costs for the consumptions of the crude oil products. The momentum of the investments opportunities of upstream oil and gas sector will be slightly decreased, and is also affected by the development of renewable energy sector and nuclear energy. We can assume that the global oil crisis continue to affect in most major East Asia economies. After fulfilling its chairmanship and role of ASEAN last year, Myanmar intends to remain fully engaged in regional responsibilities, and to this end will study all prospects of the enhancing regional cooperation. So due to unfortunate economic policy, over the years, our country has lagged behind our counterparts in Asia or the world. But in the coming years, Myanmar will see much better infrastructures in roads, electric grids, and accessible transportations from markets and for people, and telecommunications and water supply as a necessary precondition for the economic development of the country as a whole, even in remote areas. In order to enhance our economic growth, Myanmar will focus increasingly on the promotion of the value-added export and the export of finished products rather than raw goods. And we still have a way to go. Also in terms of recapturing the qualified labels and skills. But over the next 2 decades, this will become a reality. We can take advancements of new technology to leapfrog forward to achieve our goals in many sectors. We have also tried to enhance the capacity of our citizens by planning to open more vocational training schools and improving the standards and the quality of education provided by our universities. So soon, the higher education sector will be open to private investment. Later this year, we will launch the country's first stock exchange, a move that brings with its sweeping reforms in corporate governance and financial transparency standard. Amid all these economic activities, we are also aiming for responsible and sustainable development. For this reason, we have signed up to international treaties in field ranging from labor standards to environmental and human rights issues. Myanmar is now an EITI candidate country, ahead of major countries like the United States. We are lucky to have abundant natural resources, and we have to make sure these resources will also profit future generations to come. It is my sincere wish that my country can use the inspiration of others, such as Norway, and introduce a sovereign wealth fund with a part of the proceeds coming from our energy and natural resources, such as water, oil, natural gas, as well as from the mines, to build reservoir of the future and the times of need. So our economic transformation is in many ways tied to peace also. So in order for the peace process to move forward successfully, it is important that citizens enjoy peace dividend. Many people use the term peace dividends, but our idea of dividends is to achieve empowerment for our country and our people to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And I'm not talking about aid, handouts, grants. This type of empowerment that comes from the value of honest work can happen with the help of responsible investment. Last. So I'm convinced that many development and economic projects will be undertaken in many of those conflict areas or soon to be former conflict areas in consultation with the government, ethnic armed groups, and local communities. So I believe that responsible investment, both foreign and domestic, in those areas will enable to peace process that deliver genuine and tangible benefit to local communities in those areas. So once the country is stable, peaceful, and prosperous, we will also be able to undertake democratic reforms in a speedier manner. I would like to say that we are well on our way to becoming a peaceful, harmonious, and prosperous nation. We are doing our parts to usher in peaceful transition in Myanmar at the crossroad of great civilization of Asia, when we had the opportunity to chair ASEAN, a regional bloc seeking to promote peace and stability in the region, and we have done our best to enhance this intention. So I ask all the major stakeholders in the region to cooperate this spirit and our shared dreams of making Asia and the world more peaceful and prosperous reality. So on this note, I will conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you for all.
Thank you very much. One of the problems of having a panel of this size is that we only have 21 minutes. And so what I want to do is to maximize the time, and using the prerogative of the chair, I will ask each of you a question, and please answer as quickly and honestly as you can. And I will not go by the order that we went. So my first question is to Dr. Narongchai Akrasanee. Your country has gone through some fairly significant political problems over the last several years. And there are many people outside of Thailand who are concerned by Thailand's longer-term prosperity because of the domestic issues. How do you foresee Thailand's political future, and how can you reassure the rest of the world that Thailand is back in business?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please understand. I lived through this period for many years, and I came to the conclusion that I've lived with this, the burden of ideology of democracy. I think our society, Thailand, many of the leaders study overseas in the Western countries, and they came back with that burden of ideology of democracy. But over the years, we have had no luxury of choices. We have had no luxury of choices. And when I had this first public job, it was because I was against military government. That was 1973, 1974, almost 40 years ago. Now I am part of the military government. What a life. So that's explained Thailand. You know, we try too hard to have democracy. Now we realize that we have to have what we call a more authority-oriented government, very much like Singapore. Not military government, not authoritarian government, no. An authority-oriented government, not liberty-oriented government. That would produce better stability for us. For us now, security comes before wealth. Security comes before wealth. So you can guess from what I said, the next few years, there would be in place a authority-oriented kind of government that will keep stability in Thailand so that we can introduce reform. All the things that Maris mentioned, you know, all are this very important. And it needs political stability to introduce all these reforms. And that you can expect from Thailand. I hope you believe me.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that our Singaporean hosts will see the distinction that you have made. Now, Mr. Lee Wei, as China prepares for the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, the party can be proud of tremendous achievements in the economic sphere, the quality of life, and China's standing in the world. But you have educated the most globalized, open, and free generation in the world. How will the Communist Party maintain its control in China in a land of increasing prosperity and freedom?
Yeah. 主持人让我简短的回答，我只讲2点。第一，主持人提出的这个问题的答案，实际上我们最近中央政府、中国共产执政党中央政府做出的4个全面部署，是它的最主要的含义。一个是全面实现小康社会，第二个是全面深化改革，第三个是全面依法治国，第四个是全面从严治党。这儿就从而保证中国能够继续繁荣的发展，继续能够不断的提高人民的生活。具体的这个途径，我只讲3点，就是过去改革开放或者建立新中国以来，尤其改革开放以来，这个过去的发展方式已经与现在的时代的发展相不适应了。我们重点要在3个方面要寻求突破，而从这个3个方面寻求红利。一个是从改革，主要是体制改革当中要红利； 第二个是向更为开放的大方针、更为开放要红利；第三个是从科技创新驱动方面要红利。
Okay, thank you very much. Let me then turn to Professor Mary Pangestu. You touched upon it briefly, and it is the role of Asian women, not only in Indonesia, but throughout the region, I would argue, is going to be one of the greatest economic drivers of the region and the world. What are your thoughts about the future role of empowering women in Asia?
Yeah, it's at various levels. I think if you start with the labor force participation rate, which the numbers show it's increasing, but not yet up to the potential optimal. So I think there's still room to grow. And if you look at the equal pay, equal work, still not quite there yet. So again, that's another area to be addressed. I think on equal education for girls, that's a lot of major improvement in Asia, including Indonesia. So I would say that's still an important area. So I always say that when you talk about empowerment of women, it has to be from birth all the way to the top level of career. And at birth, obviously it's the nutrition, the health, and then the education, access to education. Now, as we enter now into what I mentioned earlier, secondary education and tertiary education, again, empowerment of women and making sure equal access there. And then when you get to the kind of the workforce level, higher up level, it's entrepreneurship, so microfinancing for women. In fact, a number of banks that I know have found that this is actually a good business. And it's not just about empowerment and a nice program or CSR program for empowering women, but it actually makes good business sense. A lower default rate, if I'm not mistaken, and so on. So empowerment of women through the access to capital, access to market, and then finally, of course, at the leadership level, making sure that we have access to at the corporate level as well as at government and political level. I'm not so much a fan of, affirmative action, where you say, okay, 30% or 50% of women have to be in corporate board. But I think, again, it makes good business and economic sense. Diversity of all types will improve your bottom line at the end of the day.
Okay. Mr. Ahluwalia, you've played a critical role in shaping India's economic growth strategy. And so I wanted to ask you, as one of the major, if not emerging superpowers of the region, what is India's big idea to ensure a future of Asia that is prosperous, free, and stable? And by the way, you can also comment on your Thai friends' comments too.
I think as our Chinese colleague mentioned, one of the principles, the 5 principles of Panchashila was non-interference. So I'm not going to comment on anyone else's view about what kind of political system is good. But first of all, as somebody mentioned, Amartya Sen, I think, has described us as argumentative Indians. So to ask an Indian what is India's big idea, this is very dangerous. They don't believe in single big ideas. But I do think that probably one of the most important things that has happened is that India is actually joining in the process of integrating with Asia, East Asia, Look East policy, etc. So I think we have a stake in the continuing prosperity of this region. I think Professor Pangestu mentioned the IMF's new normal. I don't actually buy that. I think the IMF is being carried away by readily accepting much lower total factor productivity growth in Asia. If you look at it in terms of supply side factors, there's absolutely no reason to believe that all the factors that led to higher total factor productivity growth have come to an end. The real problem is demand from industrial countries will be lower, so we must restructure the system. And after all, if our economies are now becoming large, and if they remain open, which at the moment they all want to, I think we should just find other avenues of exports, which we will. So frankly, India's big idea is to be part of the Asian region's prosperity, to be open, to be open on trade, to be open on investment. I do feel, which I mentioned in my earlier remarks, the one thing that is missing is integration on the financial sector. That's tough, but I think we ought to put it on the agenda and see what we can do about it.
Okay. Mr. G. Peiding, there is no issue in Asia that can be resolved without China's participation. You would agree. But Asia is also concerned about China's seeming assertiveness in this region. So how can you reassure the rest of Asia that what you are doing is not only good for China, but for good for the rest of Asia?
And first of all, as I mentioned, the future of China, the dream of China, will be closely related to the development and the prosperity of our continent. We are happy to see the stability and peace, not just in Southeast Asia, but in the whole continent. I ended by saying at my contribution, the future of Asia rests on peace, rests on stability. Without these two things, there is no chance. So we try to assure our neighbors. Of course, there are some quarters they want to fend up, disputes. I don't see it is serious. China needs Asia, rest of Asia, and vice versa. I'm sure this is from the bottom of my heart, also from the heart of China. Thank you.
Well, with the reassurance, my last question is, Minister, from Myanmar's perspective, you are situated between two Asian giants, India and China. And obviously you want to have good relations with both. But at times, isn't that a headache for you? Do you have to choose between China on Monday and then India on Tuesday? Or do you have something in mind that you can share with the rest of us?
Thank you for asking me these questions. So the location of our country is between the two major powers, the India and the China. We have to stay in that two major power very diplomatically, and then also to face some of the cooperation and coordination between all the sectors, economy and energy and all the social sectors. We have to cooperate with them. So we have some the profit of that situation to take that the opportunities. Luckily, the India have also looked East policy.
That's right.
It is the promotion of the trades and investments coming from west to the east, and also China also have that geopolitics locations of the west door of the Bay of Bengal. So if we use that opportunity, we can have that the profit of our country and promote the regional stability and the promotion of the investment and trade.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have 7 minutes, so we really can't do much, but I would like to get at least a couple of questions from the floor. Can you please be quick, direct, and then we'll continue. Please, sir.
Well, thank you. First of all, I thank the organizer for inviting me to this forum. We have heard a lot of comments on regional cooperation on many areas, but we have not talked about regional cooperation on the monetary side. Some have commented that the recent financial crisis was possibly because we rely on currencies outside the region, particularly on US dollar. And after the crisis, they've been printing a lot of money. People are saying that there may be another crisis in the waiting. Why is regional cooperation on the monetary area not mentioned. Is there a need? And if so, what should be the direction? And I'm from Hong Kong.
Okay. Can I ask you, Mr. Ahluwalia, to respond to the gentleman's question?
Yes, certainly. I think this is an issue which, the three largest economies in Asia, that's China, India, Indonesia, are all members of the G20. So actually in the G20 process, our governors of the central banks are constantly discussing with others. There are also some mechanisms for internal cooperation. But in the nature of monetary policy, what is needed is a better understanding of what other central banks are doing. I agree that we don't have a separate institutional mechanism, maybe things like reserve swaps, etc., but some of those also exist. Actually, we've done quite well, because one of the consequences of the original experience of the East Asian crisis was that virtually all the countries have built up very substantial reserve buffers. And we had one experience with, let us say, what was called the temper tantrum. And there was an expectation that the Fed might raise interest rates. And on the whole, Asia did quite well out of it. And we were able to manage. My guess is right now, a lot of the possibilities of these changes in interest rates in the Federal Reserve have been pretty well discounted by markets. And the countries are probably in a position where, if and when that happens, it will not lead to excessive disruption. I mean, simply because they themselves have the ability to deal with any temporary change in flows. I mean, otherwise, it's the real economy and the performance of the real economies that is going to matter. And frankly, I think the Asian region remains the one most likely to show good real economic growth.
The second question is from former Prime Minister Han Duck-soo from Korea. Can you please ask your question, sir?
Very short, two questions to Marie. You suggested very good directions that we should follow, the 5-1. Is it possible for you to prioritize those 5 directions we should follow? If you cannot be able to do that, why don't you single out one most important policy we should follow? The second one, I totally agree with you that Asian regionalism should be open. And I'm very much encouraged that in RCEP, we are actually inviting all other countries too, including United States. On TPP, US policymakers are saying that TPP is also open. If participating countries can take and accept the conditions and rules and regulations that are actually there. Of course, many journalists are saying that US is excluding China and things like that. What is your take from your interactions with the policymakers participating in TPP negotiations? Thank you.
If I had to prioritize out of the 5, I think I'd prioritize 2, just because I think if you did those 2, a lot of other things could follow. I would say infrastructure. And that's, for us, when we first came into government in 2004, that was our priority. We went through a lot of difficulties. I'm not sure that we're over the difficulties yet. I think it's still clearly a very important issue to get the policy right, to get the structures right, to get the funding, private, public, and so on right. And making sure you use whatever budget space you have effectively for infrastructure. Second would be the productivity and innovation issue. And I would agree with my Indian colleague that when we talk about the IMF numbers are showing that productivity, the source of growth from productivity is slowing down, but it doesn't mean that it's very low or it's going to go away. It's how do you find new sources of productivity growth? And if it's not going to come from demand from the usual big markets, it's going to come from us, and it will come from us, from our regional growth. And that's why getting that right, and that includes, because there's a lot of business people here, it's the businesses that I think a lot of productivity growth can come from how businesses are going to respond to these new challenges. You know, no more commodity boom. You're going to have to find other ways of doing business. And I would say services sector is the untapped potential in our region. And finally, on TPP and RCEP, I think on TPP, we are not quite, because they're so secretive, we don't quite know what's going on in there. You have to ask somebody who's one of the parties in the negotiations. But I would say it's two different approaches. TPP is high standard comprehensive. RCEP is bottom up, building up from the easier to the more difficult. And hopefully someday they'll meet. But TPP, we are not clear on the accession at all. You know, what terms do you come in if you came in after it's finished? Whereas RCEP, actually, we have an open accession clause built into RCEP, which says that, okay, we're prioritizing originally the plus ones, but anyone else can join at any time.
Very quick last question from my dear friend from Malaysia, the former chairman of Malaysia Air Service, please. But make it very, very brief, because we are out of time.
Thank you, first moderator. Right, I think Marie sort of gave some kind of reality check against the kind of expectations that we have in terms of the rates of growth from an economic perspective, emphasizing infrastructure and productivity. I'd like to give a reality check from the standpoint of geopolitics, if I may. I mean, China is obviously the most important country in Asia, and China has done, you know, many things, in terms of the geo-economic shift. You are the heavyweight. In terms now of geofinancial things, your AIIB is also very important. But in terms of geoeconomics, the continuing problems in the South China Sea has not been solved. And you say we can cooperate and solve, Mr. G, through cooperation, mutual relations. And then we can have joint development. But you cannot have joint development. Businesses will not make investments in a situation of uncertainty. Now, what the missing link, short of solution of the dispute, is having the code of conduct. Having the code of conduct. Why is China still not going along with the finalization of the code of conduct? Thank you.
Mr. G, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you very much. And as I said, you know, and the South China Sea and is supposed to be among of the major disputes. To my assessment, there was quite calm when there was new resources discovered. Then when the oil was discovered, when there is some encouragement from different quarters, then it became a problem. And people are accusing China, and we are not, you know, supporting the freedom of navigation. That's not true. You know, there is historical records. It was recognized by our friends. I don't want to name them. They recognized a few years back. Now, all of a sudden, there are some resources. They want to jump into disputes. And there are some people they want to fend up. That became an issue. I don't think it's a big issue, and China wants to cooperate. We want to talk bilaterally with Vietnam, with the Philippines, with others. And I don't think, if we cannot solve it, it's not easily to be solved, but if we can come, sit down and talk. And recently, I'm sure you have noticed, the Communist Party chief of Vietnam is visiting China.
That's right.
We're trying to find out some solutions.
Okay.
We don't need to worry about it. And China, as I mentioned, we need peace in the continent. We also need peace in South China Sea. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure that that particular issue will be discussed in the Singapore Forum next year. So in the interim, make sure that you have a solution. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry that we didn't have more time to interact with the audience, but I think all of us in this panel realize that the future of Asia is not for us. It's for all the young people who have helped us organize this conference. And there's a very young lady, a very sharp young Indonesian lady who is helping me as a liaison officer, Gustirami Amelia Restmono, and she's studying political science at SMU in Singapore. And the future of Asia belongs to her generation. And so what we talk about, all of this really depends on how she will perceive our future. And I think my last point is this: the two giants on this podium, China and India, you have a huge responsibility, because whatever choice you make will not just impact Chinese and Indians, but it will impact all of us in Asia and the world. So on that note, let me thank again our wonderful hosts and to all of our friends in Singapore, and in particular to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong for taking this great initiative. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panel for session 1.